Hey everybody! Welcome to C3 Films. Today we're doing It Wasn't That Good for another Zack Snyder film. I guess maybe not another, but we're gonna do Sucker Punch. And spoiler alert for those of you who haven't seen it, you don't really need to. It's not that good, obviously. So I'm Cheryl, and this is
Chris.
and let's get started. So, Chris, tell me why you didn't think Sucker Punch was that good.
Uh, there's a couple of reasons. So I want to like Sucker Punch. Even when I watch it again, I want to like Sucker Punch. And when anyone talks to me about like movies or openings to films, I will actually reference the opening to Sucker Punch because I actually think that it's a really cool way to open a movie because you show an entire story of what happens without any dialogue. And I always like it when films can do that, when you can tell a story with no dialogue, but you know exactly what's happening and you're getting the entire story. And the music choice that they use in that opening segment is also really cool. I am with that movie. Everything in the first 5 minutes leading up to that moment when they're in the car and the word "sucker punch" appears in written in rain on the side of the window. I think I think it's amazing, and it makes you really excited for what this movie is going to be. And then you realize that, unfortunately, the movie is kind of nonsensical with its story and how their motif, their not it's not their motif, their metric, their device. That's the word I'm looking for. The device of the other world doesn't really matter, and therefore you don't really care. And if you don't care, it's hard to get behind the film.
Yeah, I mean, definitely I give, credit for the idea of having like this alternate reality, but my problem with it was it just felt like it was too long for the scenes when like she is dancing. Like we never really get to see the dance. It's just represented by a whole nother scene of like her fighting for her life and then later the other girls fighting alongside her. And my problem with that was they didn't feel like they mattered because every time they basically succeed, and I think there was only like that one time when Rocket dies that they don't succeed, and it's reflected in the combat in that scene. But mostly for me, it felt like it was filler. At some point, I actually was like, okay, I don't need to see this part, so I'm gonna stop watching it, and I like walked away from it and like just listened to it to make sure I wasn't like gonna miss the next scene. So I just left it running and like got up and walked away, and I was like, these are just filler scenes, and they're really unimportant, and they didn't even really look that great. I know you said that before this show that you thought that it was a really beautiful film. I kind of disagree because I think it's too much. Like the CGI and like the combat, it looks so hokey and like for like the CGI was really bad, and like it didn't look like they were actually where they were supposed to be. And like the combat was kind of cool. I think for once Snyder did slow motion in like good spaces. I don't I think that there was still a lot of slow motion that was unnecessary in other places that like took too long to do, but I did not really enjoy the combat as much as I wanted to.
Yeah, I can understand that. I don't know if I used the word beautiful. If I did, then that was an overestimation. I think the movie does look good. There's like some cool shots and stuff. Like for instance, there's this cool shot where the girls are in the back room, like looking at a mirror while talking to each other, and the camera's panning around, like on one side of the mirror, then actually goes through the mirror, and then you're on the other side, and you're looking at them, and they're looking at a mirror at the same mirrors, but from an opposite angle. And like when I saw that shot, I was like, I actually don't know how they did that. and I mean they had to use CG to do that shot, but it looked really cool because it makes you think that you're looking on the left side of a room, but then when you're done, you're actually looking at the right side of a room, but the room itself was mirrored when they were panning through. So like things like that were cool, but there's other like the movie basically wants to be a live action anime. That's essentially what they're doing. They have these powers. They can jump out of like helicopters and land at superhero landings and cause craters. They have these big like fight scenes with these creatures and stuff that are like knocking them through buildings, but they're still fine. Um, and that's all well and good, but it doesn't matter. And I remember when I first saw the film, I was thinking to myself, if the actions that were happening in that world could be somehow tied to the actions that are happening in the real world, even if they're different, but there is some correlation similar to the one time when Rocket dies, then it means more. It matters more because we can tell ourselves this is what they're seeing. This is kind of how they're envisioning what they're doing. But what they're actually doing is something else. But based off of that world, we can surmise what's happening because the two are related. But that's not how it's handled here. So, like you said, it is filler. Um, the and it, the movie I think really, and this is where I have to say maybe there's a chance that the movie is smarter than I am, but the movie is doing three layers. There are three layers in this film, all shot differently. You have the actual layer of the reality, which is the insane asylum. Then you have the second layer, which is like the burlesque dancing club. And then the third and final layer is the layer where it's all action set pieces and they're fighting. The movie also begins by going through the entire actions of the film in basically like 5 seconds. It tells you what's going to happen. You see her, she walks past the map, she walks past the fire, she walks past the knife, she sees the key, and then you see John Hamm give her a lobotomy, and then it cuts to the burlesque scene, and then we're into the movie. It literally runs through the entire movie in the first 5 seconds. So I feel like this movie is trying to have some type of psychological message or some type of underlying theme that maybe I'm just not getting, but I also don't think that it was carried out that well.
Yeah, I definitely felt like it was weird that they had three layers. Like, what is the purpose of having reality and then a fantasy in a fantasy and a reality? I was like, this is like Inception, but it's like less thoughtful, and it just seems so unnecessary. Like, why couldn't it just be like they could have just removed the whole first layer or the whole second layer, and the
Right.
whole third layer. Like, they just needed two of them. Really, they didn't need three. I mean, like, I feel like the awesomeness of the third layer, which is the combat scenes, was lost because it just felt like so inserted into the movie, where it, like we keep saying, it literally serves no purpose. It's just her dancing and distract, like literally you could get rid of it and then just actually have the actress do a little dance and that's it. And that would have made the movie like at least 30% better.
Well, it's funny you say that because the other thing about like just having her dancing is the fact that it would make more sense because the thing that becomes hard to like kind of rectify is the fact that you have the other girls in this alternate reality as well, but they're not dancing. So it's like, why do they have this kind of shared reality or shared delusion when it's not all of them dancing together? I can almost make an argument that if it's all of them dancing, then it makes sense for them all to be there. But if they're not all dancing, why these other four girls and not any of the other girls that are standing around watching Baby Doll dance? There's
Mm-hmm.
just there's no rhyme or reason other than the fact that these are our main characters. And then, the other part that the movie I think is trying to be smart with is the fact that when you first meet Sweet Pea, she literally says, you know that I'm the star. And that's supposed to be the movie's like nudge, nudge, wink, wink to tell you that she's the main character and the story is actually about her and not Baby Doll. Um, but even that kind of feels weird because I was watching this movie knowing that, and based off of the things I was seeing, I was like, it doesn't really feel like it's Sweet Pea's story. Like I'm not getting that from the scenes that I'm seeing. Like Sweet Pea and Rocket, yeah, they have a backstory more than Amber and Blondie, but we don't see any of it. And we spent the entire opening with Baby Doll, so it's her plan.
Yeah.
I don't know. It felt weird.
It didn't make sense at all. I mean, it made sense that like she had to sacrifice herself to like save Sweet Pea, but it didn't really point to Sweet Pea being the main character, especially since like you said, the background we get, like we get the origin story for Baby Doll, we get, you know, the plan, and like she's also the leader. The whole time Sweet Pea is like against it. She's like, you know, like a the conflict almost for Baby Doll, because she's like, I don't think we should do this, and it takes her some time to like get on board with it. She's very dismissive to Baby Doll, so like there's nothing that really points to Sweet Pea being the one that's gonna pull through to the end and be the main character.
Yeah, yeah, there really isn't. And like the movie tries to play with like it's really trying to do this kind of this is before Inception, but almost kind of Inception slash like delusion or alternate realities, but like things that exist in one reality are actually real. Because the other part that got me was the end of the movie, because every layer is shot differently. So props for that. The intention is that if you're seeing it shot this way, we're in a different layer. It's kind of like Pan's Labyrinth in that way. It's shot one way, we're in the real world. It's shot another way, we're in the fake world. It's shot in another way, we're in the even faker world. So it just blew my mind that the last scene of the movie where, and then once again, this might be something I missed, but where Sweet Pea's getting on the bus, it's shot like the burlesque world,
Mm-hmm.
which we know isn't real. And then we see the bus driver, who's the guy that they were seeing in their fantasies or in their imagination, and he's talking to her as if he knows her. So there's supposed to be this kind of like thing based off of like the opening monologue of the film, where it's like angels and appearing to you and stuff like that, which also doesn't track well with the rest of the movie. That opening dialogue is an issue for me. Because they say even something like your angels will shout through you through the voice of like a dragon or a demon or something like that if they need to. Um, so yeah, and then the idea that the entire plan was so that Sweet Pea could live. Why? Why was it important that Sweet Pea live and all the rest of these girls die? Like, what? I don't get what makes her so special. I get that she's strong, but based off of that their shared reality, they're all strong. They're all capable. So the only thing that I got from Sweet Pea and what the movie kind of tells me is that she gets to benefit from not wanting to do something, and even though she didn't want to do it and everyone else did, she got to live and got to be free because everybody else was willing to sacrifice themselves for her.
Yeah. What kind of message does that send? But you know, for about the bus driver though, the thing that bothered me was like, well, one, I thought that like he was a figment of Baby Doll's imagination, but then he turns out to be a real person. And I was like, okay, so the other girls were in the fantasies, but he was there too, but he has nothing to do with the psych ward. And on top of that, like as a bus driver, why did he lie to the cops to save Sweet Pea, like some rando girl that like he'd never met before in that reality? Um, it just didn't make very much sense. And I get like maybe he's like the guardian or whatever, but then it goes, then it becomes a like, oh, so she needs a guy to save her. I thought this was supposed to be about strong females, and they're all like, the other thing that bothered me is like, this the movie is gross. Like, if you're gonna do a movie that, you know, starts out with like sexual crimes, there has to be something that like, there's no justice, you know, for the for the like the father or stepfather, whoever, like he just gets
No,
away with it. And
yeah, there's no on-screen justice.
yeah, and it's not even just about like the other people, like the whole thing is just really gross because it starts out with like the father being gross, and then they go to a facility, they put baby doll in a facility where in the second layer and probably even the first layer, the people who are working at the facility are gross, and or at least the doctor. And like it's like a, it's a touchy topic, and I feel like they didn't treat it well. They didn't treat it respectfully. They made the girls like really sexed up and stuff, and like you could say that that's empowering and stuff, but I feel that it just wasn't done in the right way. Like that's not how you show the girls being empowered in this situation.
Yeah, and like there I think there are some arguments I read about a while ago, and I don't know them all enough to basically give them credence here, but there were some arguments I read where people were talking about how this movie was also supposed to call into or call to attention the objectification of women in the nerd space, which is why like all of the places that we go to are like nerd centric type things where you have like the anime aesthetic with the samurai, or like baby dolls wearing a schoolgirl outfit that you could call say a Japanese schoolgirl outfit, and then all these other little elements, and it's supposed to be Zack Snyder um basically, I don't know if the satirizing is the right word, but um basically kind of pointing a finger um, at nerd culture and saying this is the type of stuff that you like and this isn't okay. But you I don't, and like I said, I don't know enough about it to like really talk about it. But if that is the case where that is something that he wanted to do, it seems weird that you criticize this type of um, fetishization of women by giving those nerds exactly the thing that they want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that doesn't make sense to me. Like how I felt about it though was just that it was too much. Like that's just, I just feel like the topic of sexual harassment was not treated properly. It just didn't like sit very well with me. I would have much preferred it to just to not even be sexualized. I feel like that itself would have made the the story or like the girls even more empowered by not being victims to begin with.
Yeah, because basically, that's where I remember that's where it started to feel bad to me too. Because when these girls start dying one by one, it does feel gross because it's like they're not getting they're not getting out. They're not fighting back. They are just victims throughout the entirety of the story, and and the fact that Sweet Pea survives or gets out is not through any machinations of her own of anything that she does. I mean, if anything, you could argue that she didn't take the knife quick enough, and that's what actually causes them to get caught. So it's it is very it is very weird, and it does feel bad when you start seeing Oscar Isaac's character just shooting these girls and like taking them out one by one when the moment they start to drop. And I don't think that means like they can't die, but there doesn't, if your message is about empowerment, these women are only empowered in their imaginations, but in the reality they're just as helpless, and that never goes away. And that is a very contradictory message. Um, Saying that you can only be empowered in your imagination, in your mind, but reality will still kick you in the teeth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like at the very end, she still even needs someone to rescue her. So
True. True.
it just didn't
Yeah.
feel good to
And
me.
no, yeah, and like, and what you were talking about, how the stepfather doesn't get any justice. I mean, they imply that he will, because when they come and arrest Oscar Isaac, he says, "Oh, I'll tell you about the stepfather. I'll tell you all the information. I'll tell you all the money," and that is supposed to be enough to make you, as the viewer, like be able to infer that he will be dealt with. But it's not enough. It's not enough for catharsis and to feel good, because we started the movie seeing him being a terrible human being. We know that the little sister died in order, because Baby Doll was trying to protect her from him. So we know how terrible he is. We know that Baby Doll gets the lobotomy because of him. So the fact that we don't actually ever see him get comeuppance on screen, like the most that we see is Baby Doll spit on him in the burlesque world, where all of a sudden he's a priest in that world for some reason. Um, and I guess he also was a zombie. Like I think he was one of the zombies in the second world. Which that'll bring me to my final point. When the worlds were tied to the object that they were trying to get, it felt a little better, even though it didn't feel great. It's like, oh, we have to get the map in the real world. We're getting the map in this world. We got to get the fire. We're getting the fire. But then when they have to get the knife, it has literally nothing to do with this, with a bomb on a speeding train. There's nothing about a bomb on a speeding train that equates to a knife. And so that one, even though it has probably like the best action sequence out of the movie, it's actually, I think the first action sequence is the best one. But point is that it doesn't. It feels even more like you don't care, because you're not making, because already the worlds aren't connected, and that one connection that we had, which were the objects, is now completely void in this train sequence, because now this has nothing to do with a knife.
Yeah, I totally skipped that one. I was like, I don't need to see this. They're gonna get it or they're not, and I'll wait for that part.
Right, exactly. And so yeah, and then yeah, I mean the knife gives him the key, because he's able to, like, she's able to stab him. But either way, I think at the end of the day, I wanted to like the movie. I wanted to like the ideas that the movie was trying to put forth, but it didn't feel strong to me. It didn't feel good to me. And as far as the story goes, it did not feel like there was any connecting fiber between these layers that would give me a viable reason or way to understand why these layers are important in the context of this story.
The
So,
only thing I have left to say is that I did enjoy one line that one of the characters said in the movie, and that's, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything.
oh yeah,
I like that
yeah,
line. But that's pretty much it.
yeah, yeah. That was the guy that said that. Um, yeah, I think if you look at a movie like Pan's Labyrinth, that's a movie that does a similar type of thing like this, but better. Because even by the end of Pan's Labyrinth, I'm not gonna get into spoilers for it, but there's a question where you can ask what's real and what's not when you finish Pan's Labyrinth. And I feel like that's what this movie was trying to do, but just wasn't as successful. Pan's Labyrinth also only had two layers, so maybe that's the real thing. Maybe you really just want to stick to two layers at the end, because there's what we doing a flashback within a flashback is not normally a good idea.
Yeah. They definitely teach you that in film school, so.
So yeah, was there anything else you want to say? Are you good?
I'm good. Yeah, take us out.
All right. So that's what we thought about Sucker Punch. No hate on you if you guys like the movie. It's just we didn't enjoy it. But what did you think about the movie? Whatever you thought, comment below. Let us know. And while you're down there, if you give us a like, share, subscribe. Even if you don't, though, I have been Chris, and this has been
Cheryl, and we will see you all next time.